Hello everyone! Welcome back to my channel. I hope y'all are doing well. So once again I'm going back to the Owl House, and as we're waiting for another bout of hiatus for season 3 to finally come out, we are going to go over some of the saddest moments in the Owl House. Moments that were so tear-jerking and sad, we don't know how our hearts were able to function after those moments. So, grab your tissues, and very, very clean ones at that, as well as get ready to stuff yourself with a boatload of ice cream and maybe a little bit of pie, 'cause here we go. So ever since King was a baby, he always believed that he was some mighty ruler, a king amongst all of demonkind. However, it never seemed to make sense, and we all had struggled to understand of who he really is as a character. It wasn't until much later that we found out more about him, and the results are insanely sad. When Ida explains of where King had come from, he soon begins to remember his previous life of what he used to do before being discovered by Ida. And upon realizing that concept, he was in for a major shell shock of his life. Now that he knows that he wasn't a king per se, but something else entirely different, this gives him a struggle of identity, trying to figure out who he is, as well as what it really means to be the person he wants to be at this point. And yeah, we feel really bad for King in that moment, where he was just a baby when all of this was happening, and now he has to deal with trying to understand where he came from and who he is. And if our hearts wouldn't be damaged bad enough.
The children out there haven't either. Don't know a thing about their ravenous appetites or their terrible cries. Even their babies act like little monarchs. The last living titan. I saw it once. Before it disappeared, its hateful roar blew out my eardrums. How did it go? Wah!
Good lord! King has been through so much. He is only 8 and already he's going through so much trauma and identity issues, more than the average character can take. It doesn't exactly help that now that he knows he's a Titan, and now he has to deal with whatever's going to happen next in Season 3. In Season 1, it's understandable you'd have a love-hate relationship with her. On the one hand, her design is nice, she's very charismatic, but the things she does in this series is pretty awful in certain standards. I mean, after all, she was guilty of putting the curse on Ida all those years ago, and was practically driving her own sanity to the ground, just trying to make things right in the worst ways possible. When she finally went against Emperor Belos, she had to force to hide out, along with the idea that we now know that she has some mommy issues, wanting nothing more than some certain approval. And by keeping up appearances, the stress of the approval was so much, it finally consumed her thanks to via the curse. When it was over and done, we definitely feel a bit bad for Lilith in this one. I mean, sure, she did some crummy things, but when you look at the fact that her approval, or want of approval, drove her to insanity, and just seeing her crying like this definitely makes you feel bad of how stressed she is and just wants nothing more than to be loved at the end of the day. Yeah, these two have a bit of a complicated relationship. On the one hand, it's pretty healthy. I mean, they definitely hear each other out most of the time, and Camila's not very weirded out by by Lucy's creativity. But the main problem is, well, just how she says things. Especially in Yesterday's Lie, she does feel a bit upset and betrayed of Lu's lying to her all this time, and then making her do a promise of coming back home in a very complicated way. This, of course, is a bit controversial at the end of Yesterday's Lie. We all feel a mix of emotions. On the one hand, we feel really sad for both Luz and Camila for being separated one more time, as well as the fact that now Luz is forced to make a choice of her own, whether or not she should stay in the human realm and forget her friends, or having to stay in the demon realm and be lost to her mother forever. So yeah, this is a very heartbreaking situation. So in Hootie's Moving Castle, we learned that Willow and Amity had once been friends. And it was definitely a bit shocker considering how they were presented in I Was a Teenage Abomination. However, things become very complicated when we finally get to Understanding Willow, where we learn that, understandably, Willow is angry about all that's happened all those years ago. Amity practically pushing Willow away because she was a quote-unquote weak witch. Their fallout is practically heartbreaking because they had a very sweet and healthy relationship before things went crumbling down just as they're about to go to Hexside. And yeah, this really is a very devastating scene. But here's what makes it worse. Turns out the Blight parents were the very reason that Amity had to break her relationship off with Willow, because if she didn't, Willow would never get to Hexside, and Odalia would definitely make sure of that. So you can understand how unfair this situation is. I mean, they're kids, for goodness sakes. I mean, they're young enough to understand who their friends are, but they have the capability of knowing when they're in a toxic relationship or not. But the sad thing is, this was a situation beyond Amity's control, and she was forced to pull off a choice that was never hers to begin with. Even though they managed to get better in Season 2 by Labyrinth Runners, it was still such a devastating scene to watch. So even though this isn't technically a moment, I like to discuss further of just how Ida's curse is just practically the saddest thing ever, especially when it comes to knock knock on Hootie's door. So in The Intruder, we learn about Ida's curse, causing her to take on the form of an owl beast, and she has to take a special elixir. But during the early cases of her nightmares, she had to deal with everything that caused some consequences. Part of a curse has a heavy effect on her relationship with her father, practically injuring him and never again doing some proper carving than he used to do once upon a time. To make matters worse, the curse is the result of what caused the breakup of Rain and Ida having to force to hide that curse from Rain in order to protect them, and thus resulting in a major breakup, which makes the whole concept heartbreaking. So yeah, Ida's curse is one of the saddest things you know, because it was something she had to live with for the rest of her life, and was heavily influencing her relationships with her family and her friends, as well as her love life. It was so difficult for her to move past all the things that happened, and it probably still hurts when you watch it over again. Normally, Luz is a happy-and-go-lucky girl, practically not afraid to express her feelings whenever she gets mad about something. However, when she does get sad, it becomes heartbreaking. Just check this scene out alone when we learn about her father.
Today's the anniversary of my dad passing away. That's not an excuse for what I did. Like I said, it happened a while ago, so I didn't want to bring it up. He always brought us flowers on our birthdays, so after he passed away, we started
Gah! As if that wasn't painful enough, what makes it so difficult about this anniversary was the fact that Luz is far from the human realm, having no capable way of giving the flowers and join her mom for the festivities, which also feeds into the concept of what Luz will have to choose, the human realm or the demon realm, as well as the fact that now we learn more of not only Luz but also Camila and why their behaviors are the way they are today. A loss of a loved one is just very painful and hard to move past from. Rain is just such a lovable character. Ever since they were kids, Rain always adored and loved Ida, even after their breakup. They will do everything in their power to protect her from whatever schemes may be held, especially in the first part of Season 2, where Rain is first introduced. In Ida's Requiem, I'm so sorry if I accidentally use he pronouns, forgive me, they would go as far as also siding with Darius in order to protect what they love most. In Ida's Requiem, Rain sacrificed themselves in order for Ida to get away and escape for another day. And then they do it again in King's Tide, with the uncertainty of whether or not of surviving whatever trial may lie ahead. This results in Ida having a heartbreaking moment with Rain slowly dying on her lap, and us as the fandom trying to figure out what happened to our beloved non-binary character. Hopefully the fate is still good, but at the same time, we still feel so bad for Rain of having to sacrifice their lives in order to save Ida time and again. Ida's relationship with Luz really had come from a long way. Starting off as being a bit selfish, going as far as using Luz to do some of her dirty work and barely teaching her how to be a witch, and then practically going out of her way to make a special witch's wool cape for Luz. And in doing so, Ida went out of her way to actually take down her sister Lilith just to protect Luz from a very dangerous situation when Luz tried her best to get the healing hat to fix the curse on poor Ida. Unfortunately, it backfired and used up all the magic that Ida had in order to save Luz's life, resulting in her becoming a beast. What really makes this moment heartbreaking was at the tail end when Luz finally breaks down crying, filled with guilt of what she had done to poor Ida and the consequences that came with it. Holy cow! This episode was a barrage of revelations and pain. With each truth that Hunter learned, he was starting to become more discouraged of what he was explaining to Luz, along with the fact that we were introduced with the Collector and exposed to the abuse that Hunter has been exposed to. What really knocks things off is when we get some major confirmations about the show, which is basically one theory being the fact that Hunter is indeed a Grim Walker. A clone, I guess you could sort of say for the moment, until we get the full-on details about Grim Walkers. And as if that concept of pain was bad enough, we soon learn the truth about Luz. Well, Luz soon learns the truth about the person she was helping all those years ago, and that she played in a huge role into it. And this resulted in the most devastating truth about Emperor Belos, one that she had never expected. The good news is, she and Hunter managed to escape, but the bad news is they now know the truth, and Emperor Belos knew that they were in his mind, so they're gonna be hunted down mercilessly, doing as far as he could of trying to shut them down for good. And of course, Luz, at the end of the episode, is now stuck with a mountain of blame that's only gonna get bigger by the end of season 2, and my lord, these two need therapy. Hunter and Luz just need so much therapy, and the rest of us are just feeling really, really bad for the amount of suffering that these characters had just been put through. Ah, yes, you'd think that with Agony of a Witch, it would have been painful to see. But this one episode tops it all. Just when we thought Ida's sacrifice was painful, there yet reigns? Well, by King's Tide, we find ourselves practically feeling really bad, not only for Luz, but also for King as well. So, King managed to let the Collector free in order to save everyone from the draining spell and Emperor Belos in general, which was a good thing in itself, but only for a certain amount of time, because by then, the world began crumbling and the only thing King can do is convince the Collector to play Owl House. At this point, there are no words to describe the amount of pain that we're feeling right now, especially because while Luz was able to fix things back in the demon realm with Ida when she was cursed, we're now stuck with the idea that Luz might never go back home to fix things with King, let alone with the rest of the Boiling Isles. This is indeed one of the most devastating moments so far in the Owl House, and oh boy, are we going to experience a lot of emotional pain by the time Season 3 rolls into play. So these are just my thoughts, and I would like to hear yours. What do you think was the saddest moment for you in the Owl House that left you crying? So remember to do a like, subscribe. This is Dragon Videos, signing off.